Tonight, TAFE, FBI, and ICE agents have just dismantled a $2.9 billion human trafficking empire.
At 11:47 p.m., the Federal Bureau of Investigation and Immigration and Customs Enforcement issued a joint statement from their Minneapolis field office that would expose one of the darkest chapters in American law enforcement history. In a coordinated strike spanning 14 hours across the Twin Cities metropolitan area, over 800 federal agents dismantled what investigators are now calling the largest human trafficking and migrant smuggling operation ever discovered on American soil. The numbers defy comprehension. $2.9 billion in verified financial transactions over 36 months. Over 47,000 migrants trafficked through a sophisticated underground network stretching from the Horn of Africa to the American heartland. 17 tons of narcotics, including heroin, fentanyl, methamphetamine, and cocaine moved as secondary cargo alongside human beings who were treated as nothing more than inventory numbers on a spreadsheet. But here is what separates this case from every other cartel takedown you have ever heard about. This operation was not run by foreign drug lords operating from distant territories. This was not orchestrated by street-level criminals working in the shadows. This was engineered, protected, and directly commanded by individuals who swore oaths to defend the American people. And what federal investigators discovered in those encrypted servers will fundamentally change how you understand the intersection of organized crime and government power. We need to go back to where this all started. To understand how an operation this massive could exist in plain sight for years, you need to see what happened at 4:32 a.m. on January 28th in the heart of Minneapolis. The temperature hovers at 11 degrees below zero. Thick fog rolls off the Mississippi River and blankets the commercial district where Somali-owned businesses line both sides of Cedar Avenue for over 2 miles. Neon signs flicker in Arabic, Somali, and English. Most of the storefronts are closed and dark at this hour. The only sounds are the distant hum of late-night trucks on Interstate 94 and the occasional rattle of a freight train crossing the bridge towards St. Paul. But beneath that frozen silence, over 200 federal agents are moving into position. FBI tactical units, ICE special operations teams, DEA strike squads, Minnesota State Patrol SWAT, all of them wearing black combat gear, night vision goggles, and body armor stamped with agency insignias that glow faintly under infrared light. They are not here for one target. They are here for 23. At exactly 4:32 a.m., the operation begins. Flashbangs detonate simultaneously at a money transfer business on Lake Street, a halal grocery warehouse in the Cedar Riverside neighborhood, a supposed cultural community center on Franklin Avenue, 2 residential apartment complexes near Riverside Plaza, and a logistics company that claims to ship furniture and household goods across the upper Midwest. The sound of splintering doors and shouted commands in English and Somali echoes through the frozen streets. Ice crystals hang in the air as breath meets the brutal cold. Inside the money transfer office, agents find over $4.7 million in cash stacked in vacuum-sealed bags hidden inside industrial freezers labeled as lamb and goat meat shipment. The bills are still cold to the touch, bundled in denominations that suggest they were prepared for immediate transport. In the warehouse basement, agents discover something far more disturbing than cash. A fully operational command center spans the underground space. Wall-mounted monitors display live feeds from Minneapolis-St. Paul International Airport, Greyhound bus terminals, and border checkpoints as far south as Laredo, Texas. 32 laptops are running encrypted communication software with connections to servers located across 3 continents. File cabinets overflow with fake identity documents, counterfeit work visa, and fabricated asylum applications bearing official government seals that look completely legitimate to the untrained eye. This is not a smuggling ring. This is a corporate headquarters for human trafficking. At the apartment complexes, agents breach reinforced steel doors and find over 140 migrants packed into units designed for families of 4. Men, women, and children from Somalia, Ethiopia, Eritrea, and Sudan huddled together in darkness. Some have been confined there for weeks, others for months. They are malnourished, terrified, and speak in whispers about people they call the handlers. The handlers collect money. The handlers decide who eats. The handlers decide who gets to leave and who stays locked in these rooms indefinitely. In one apartment on the 7th floor, the agents find a young woman locked in a bathroom with her wrists zip-tied together. She has bruises covering her face and arms. Through an interpreter, she tells investigators that she was promised a job in America, a new life, a chance to send money home to her family. Instead, she was told she owed $18,000 for her passage and that she would work until the debt was paid. She has been in that apartment for 7 months. She has never been outside. She does not know what city she is in. But the discovery that changes everything happens at the logistics company on East Lake Street. Federal agents cut through a padlocked steel door in the loading bay and find a hidden sublevel accessed through a hydraulic lift disguised as a truck maintenance pit. When they descend into the darkness, they find themselves in a narrow concrete corridor lined with industrial metal shelving. On those shelves are shrink-wrapped bricks of heroin, methamphetamine in crystal form, fentanyl pills stamped with fake pharmaceutical logo, cocaine packaged in kilogram block. The drugs are labeled with shipping codes and inventory numbers like products in a corporate distribution center. At the far end of the corridor stands a reinforced server room, maintained at a controlled temperature of 62 degrees. Inside are 12 high-capacity hard drives connected to a satellite uplink system capable of communicating with terminals anywhere on the planet. The agents shut down the power and seize everything. They have no idea yet what is stored on those drives. But what they will discover in the coming hours will lead them directly to the architects of this empire and expose a level of institutional betrayal that will shake the foundations of American law enforcement. By 9:15 a.m., the seized servers are transported under armed escort to the FBI Cyber Division facility in Brooklyn Center, Minnesota. Digital forensics analysts begin the painstaking work of cracking the encryption protocols protecting the data. It takes them 4 hours. When they finally break through, what appears on the screen is not the chaotic financial records of a disorganized smuggling ring or the scattered communications of street-level criminals. What they see is a corporate structure, an organizational chart, a master operational blueprint with a code name stamped at the top of every file, Project Corridor North. The analysts scroll through thousands of documents, spreadsheets tracking migrant movements across 8 states, transaction logs showing payments to shell companies on 4 continents, internal communications discussing shipment schedules, route modifications, and bribery payments to individuals identified only by codename. What they piece together is a network that spans the American heartland and connects directly to criminal syndicates operating across East Africa, the Middle East, and Central America. The network is not just moving people. It is moving them as part of a larger supply chain that integrates narcotics trafficking, industrial-scale money laundering, and document fraud operations that rival any government intelligence service. The financial web is staggering in its sophistication. Then over 63 shell companies registered across Minnesota, Wisconsin, North Dakota, South Dakota, Iowa, Illinois, Michigan, and Ohio. Fake trucking firms with fleets of vehicles that exist only on paper. Sham logistics contractors that never move legitimate cargo. Nonprofit refugee assistance organizations that collect donations but provide no services. Construction companies that never break ground on any project. Import-export businesses with warehouse addresses that turn out to be empty lots. All of them connected through a central financial hub with accounts routed offshore to banks in Dubai, Nairobi, Istanbul, and the Cayman Islands. The money flows in carefully disguised increment, payments labeled as consulting fees, charitable donations to organizations that exist only in name, equipment leases for machinery that was never manufactured, service contracts for work that was never performed. Every transaction is designed to stay just below federal reporting threshold, and every single transfer is approved, authorized, or directly facilitated by encrypted communication channels linked to digital signatures belonging to government officials. One name appears more frequently than any other in the authorization log: Regional Immigration Coordinator Victor Marsh. For 4 years, Marsh served as the senior federal immigration enforcement official for the Upper Midwest region. He testified before congressional committees about border security. He appeared at press conferences discussing the fight against human trafficking. He sat in meetings with prosecutors, judges, and law enforcement commanders from a dozen agencies. And according to the evidence recovered from those servers, he designed and operated the very criminal infrastructure he publicly claimed to be fighting. The forensic team pulls up his internal communications, encrypted messages using burner applications, emails sent from accounts registered under aliases, text logs from prepaid phones that were replaced every 30 days. What they reveal is not a man who was compromised by the cartel. This is a man who built the cartel himself. Marsh used his access to federal immigration databases to alter deportation records. He created false travel histories for cartel operatives posing as legitimate refugees. He delayed removal proceedings for individuals who were actively coordinating smuggling operations. He provided advance notice of planned ICE raids to cartel members and allowing them to relocate operations hours before agents arrived. In one intercepted message dated November 14, 2024, Marsh writes to an unknown contact using a burner application. The message contains 4 sentences that will be entered into evidence at his trial. Pipeline stays open through January. No inspections on the northern corridor until after New Year. Make sure your people know the window. This is non-negotiable. The forensic analysts cross-reference the timeline. During that exact period, over 3,000 migrants were trafficked through Minneapolis and moved to secondary destinations in Chicago, Detroit, Cleveland, and New York. Over 4 tons of heroin and methamphetamine were transported using the same routes, and not a single interdiction or arrest was made by federal authorities along those corridors during that window. Because the man in charge of enforcement had shut the system down from the inside. This is not corruption. This is command-level collusion. This is not negligence. This is engineered treason. And what you are about to see next reveals how deep the rot extends and how far the federal government had to go to cut it out. At 5:48 a.m. on January 29th, the command center at FBI headquarters in Minneapolis transforms into a war room. A massive digital map covers the entire back wall. Across it pulse 74 red markers in real time. Each marker represents a confirmed location tied to Project Corridor North, safe houses where migrants are held, transit hubs where convoys are organized, money laundering fronts processing cash around the clock, narcotic storage facilities containing tons of drugs ready for distribution, cartel-controlled businesses that provide legitimate cover for criminal activity. And at the center of it all, highlighted in yellow, is the residence of Victor Marsh in the upscale suburb of Edina, Minnesota. The operation has a name now, Operation Iron Gate, and the scale of what is about to happen is unprecedented in domestic law enforcement history. Over 1,000 federal agents, 73 tactical teams, ICE Special Operations Units, DEA Strike Forces, FBI Hostage Rescue Team, Minnesota State Patrol, SWAT, ATF, Explosive Specialists. And for the first time in a domestic law enforcement operation of this magnitude, air support from U.S. Customs and Border Protection Black Hawk helicopters, equipped with thermal imaging systems and loudspeaker. The operation launches at dawn across the Twin Cities and surrounding regions. And federal teams hit their targets simultaneously. At a trucking depot in Burnsville, agents breach a loading facility and find 18 migrants locked inside refrigerated trailers with no ventilation. The temperature inside the trailers has dropped to 29 degrees. 2 of the migrants are unconscious and suffering from severe hypothermia. Paramedics rush them to Hennepin County Medical Center, while agents arrest 4 cartel operatives attempting to flee through a chain-link fence. Inside the depot office, they seize over $890,000 in cash and shipping records, showing weekly payments to a network of truck drivers who were paid to bypass weigh stations and avoid inspection checkpoints. At a luxury home in Wayzata overlooking Lake Minnetonka, agents storm the property and find a cartel logistics coordinator living under a false identity. The house contains high-end furniture, expensive artwork, and a home office with 3 encrypted laptops connected to satellite communications equipment. In the basement, they find a vault containing over $2.3 million in cash, gold bars valued at $400,000, and documents showing property ownership across 7 different states. The man is arrested without resistance. He does not say a single word. At a warehouse in South St. Paul, agents discover a hidden fentanyl pill production facility capable of manufacturing over 100,000 pills per day. The lab is equipped with industrial-grade pill presses, chemical mixing equipment, and stockpiles of raw fentanyl powder traced to suppliers in China and Mexico. With DEA, agents seize over 2.1 million fentanyl pills ready for distribution, along with enough precursor chemicals to produce an additional 5 million pills. The street value is estimated at over $40 million. 3 suspects are arrested on site. At a residential building in the Cedar Riverside neighborhood, agents enter what is supposed to be a community support center for Somali families. Instead, they find a human trafficking processing hub operating in plain sight. Over 60 migrants are being held in cramped rooms with no windows. The walls are covered with handwritten lists of names, phone numbers, and dollar amounts. Each migrant owes between $12,000 and $25,000 for their passage to America. They are told they will work in factories, hotels, or meatpacking plants until their debts are paid. But the debts never decrease. The cartel adds fees for food, housing, transportation, and even for making a phone call home. The migrants are trapped in a cycle of modern-day slavery with no path to freedom. But the most critical target of the day is Victor Marsh himself. At 7:22 a.m., a convoy of armored FBI vehicles arrives at his $1.8 million home in Edina. Agents in full tactical gear surround the property from every direction. A Black Hawk helicopter hovers overhead, its rotors beating the frozen air. The lead agent announces their presence over a loudspeaker system. Marsh steps out onto his front porch, wearing a suit and tie, as if he is preparing for another day at the office. He does not run, he does not resist. He stands there with his hands in his pockets and watches as agents approach with weapons drawn. He is arrested without incident and placed in the back of an unmarked federal vehicle. Inside his home, agents seize personal laptops, multiple phones, filing cabinets full of documents, and a home safe containing over $470,000 in cash alongside a handwritten ledger detailing payments made to 14 other government officials and law enforcement officers over the previous 3 years. By the end of the day, federal agents have seized over $11.3 million in cash, 17 tons of narcotics, including heroin, fentanyl, methamphetamine, and cocaine, 214 firearms ranging from handguns to military-style rifles, 47 vehicles used in smuggling operations, and 3 commercial properties that served as operational hubs. They have arrested 86 suspects, including cartel operatives, logistics coordinators, money launderers, and corrupted government officials, and they have liberated over 320 migrants from conditions that can only be described as modern slavery. The underworld took more damage in 14 hours than it had in the previous 14 years, but the operation is far from over, because what investigators find when they dive deeper into the seized servers reveals institutional betrayal so profound that even veteran agents find themselves physically sickened by what they read. Inside the FBI forensic lab, analysts comb through communication logs and financial records tied to Victor Marsh and his network of compromised officials. What they discover is a parallel enforcement system, a shadow operation designed to protect the cartel at every level while giving the appearance of legitimate law enforcement activity. Over the previous 4 years, Marsh systematically recruited and compromised officials across multiple agencies using a simple but effective methodology. He started small: junior immigration officers who needed money to pay off student loans, Border Patrol agents struggling with gambling debt, local police officers falling behind on their mortgages. He offered them cash payments in exchange for small favors, delaying paperwork, looking the other way during routine inspections, providing advance warning when federal operations were being planned in their jurisdictions. And once they accepted the first payment, he owned them, because every transaction was documented, every favor was recorded, every communication was saved. And if they ever tried to walk away, he had the evidence to destroy their careers and send them to prison. The records show that at least 19 immigration and customs enforcement officers, 12 customs and border protection agents, 7 local police officers, 4 deputy sheriffs, and 2 assistant county prosecutors were on the cartel payroll. They received between $5,000 and $30,000 per month, depending on their level of access and the sensitivity of the information they provided. Some altered federal databases to create false identities for cartel members. Some tipped off smugglers about pending arrests. Some filed false reports to misdirect investigations away from cartel operations. Some simply looked away when convoys passed through their checkpoints. What the federal investigators are examining is not a few bad actors scattered across different agencies. This is a second secret police force, a parallel system built to serve the cartel instead of the American public. And it was all orchestrated by a man who testified before Congress about the importance of border security, who appeared on cable news programs discussing the fight against human trafficking, and who received commendations from his supervisors for his dedication to public service. The badge was not corrupted by the cartel. The badge was weaponized by the cartel, and now the entire system must be rebuilt from the ground up. But even that is not the end of this story, because when analysts zoom out and examine the full scope of Project Corridor North, they realize that what happened in Minneapolis is not an isolated operation. And this was merely the command center of a continental network that stretches across the American heartland and connects to criminal syndicates operating on 3 continents. The logistics map recovered from the servers shows transportation routes stretching from the Canadian border down through Minnesota, Wisconsin, Illinois, Indiana, Ohio, Pennsylvania, and into New York and New Jersey. Trucks registered to shell companies moved migrants and narcotics along Interstate 94, Interstate 90, and Interstate 80 with clockwork precision. The syndicate was moving an average of 12 tons of narcotics per month through this corridor alone. Heroin sourced from Afghanistan and Mexico, methamphetamine from super labs in California, fentanyl pills produced in clandestine facilities across the Midwest, cocaine smuggled through ports in Texas and Florida. The drugs were distributed to secondary markets, generating an estimated $200 million in criminal revenue every single month. But the human trafficking operation proved even more profitable. The syndicate charged each migrant between $12,000 and $25,000 for passage to America. Over 36 months, they trafficked over 47,000 people through this single corridor. That represents gross revenue exceeding $800 million from human smuggling alone. And once the migrants arrived, they were forced into debt bonding and exploited for labor in industries ranging from meatpacking and construction to hospitality, agriculture, and domestic service. Investigators believe the total financial impact of Project Corridor North exceeds $2.9 billion. But here is the most chilling discovery of all. And in the final phase of documents recovered from the encrypted servers, investigators find evidence of what Marsh called the permanence plan in his internal communications. This was not about running a temporary smuggling operation that would eventually be discovered and shut down. This was about creating permanent infrastructure, a system that could operate indefinitely without detection, a criminal enterprise so deeply embedded in legitimate institutions that it would become impossible to remove without destroying the institutions themselves. Marsh was working to transform the Upper Midwest into a secure cartel hub, protected by corrupted officials, shell companies, and legal businesses that could launder money, while providing legitimate cover for ongoing criminal activity. He was building a shadow economy, a parallel state within the state, and he was remarkably close to succeeding. Power does not always announce itself with violence. Sometimes it arrives quietly, dressed in a suit, carrying official documents, speaking the language of law and order. Sometimes it hides behind the very institutions designed to stop it. And sometimes the most dangerous criminals are the ones who never fire a shot, because they do not need to. They have the badges, they have the authority, they have the keys to the system itself. What happened in Minneapolis is not simply a story about a drug cartel or a human trafficking ring. This is a story about what happens when corruption reaches the highest levels of government. When the people entrusted with protecting the vulnerable become the very predators exploiting them. When the systems designed to maintain justice are quietly redesigned to serve criminal enterprises. Over 47,000 human beings were trafficked like livestock through American cities. 17 tons of narcotics flooded American streets, contributing to thousands of deaths from fentanyl and heroin overdoses. Hundreds of families were destroyed, communities were poisoned, children were separated from their parents and disappeared into systems designed to exploit them. And all of it was enabled by individuals who wore the uniform of the United States government. Victor Marsh is currently in federal custody awaiting trial on over 200 counts, including racketeering, conspiracy to commit human trafficking, narcotics trafficking, money laundering, bribery, and obstruction of justice. If convicted on all charges, he faces multiple consecutive life sentences without the possibility of parole. The 19 ICE officers, 12 CBP agents, 7 police officers, 4 deputy sheriffs, and 2 assistant prosecutors who were compromised by the syndicate are also in federal custody facing charges that could result in decades of imprisonment. If you are still watching this, you need to understand something important. This story is not just about one corrupt official or one criminal network operating in one American city. This is about a systemic vulnerability that exists in every government, every institution, every system built on the assumption that the people in power can be trusted. When oversight is weak, corruption does not simply happen. It thrives. It builds infrastructure. It becomes permanent. And the only way to stop it is to drag it into the light where everyone can see it. If this story matters to you, if you believe that corruption and human trafficking must be exposed and fought at every level of government, tap the like button so more people can see this story. Comment the word expose if you think these networks need to be dragged into the light more often. Share this with someone who needs to understand how deep these systems can go. And remember, this dramatized story is fictional, but the threats it depicts are painfully real. The fight against human trafficking and institutional corruption continues every single day, and it requires all of us to remain vigilant. The light is the only thing the darkness fears.